I want to welcome you all to the North American Fruit Explorers 2023 virtual conference. My name is Chris Heater. I am the president currently of NAFEX, which is what we also call the organization for short. I'll be here as a moderator in the background today, but before we get started and before I turn it over to our host and another moderator, I want to do a little bit of kind of housekeeping kind of stuff. So a few things that we should keep in mind here. This is a webinar format, so it's unlike Zoom meetings that many of us have been having since the pandemic. In a webinar format, your participant audio and video features are automatically disabled. You'll notice that you can't chat with the other participants like you would in a normal Zoom meeting. We encourage you to ask questions, though, and you can do that through the Q&A tab in the Zoom at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions that are related to technical issues, like maybe you can't see something or hear something, you can put those in the chat. But everything else, questions, comments, please put them in the Q&A and use that tab at the bottom of your screen. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be made available to you all within a few days after the conference is done. It'll be on the nafex.org site, and there's going to be bonus resources as well. And so we will send out an email when all of that's available to you guys. And just a few words about NAFEX for those of you who might be just joining us for the first time. We've had a lot of people join us in the last couple of days, and so we want to make sure everyone is familiar with the organization. We've been around for a long, long time. We were founded in 1967. And the North American Fruit Explorers is a network of individuals throughout the U.S. and Canada, and we're devoted to the discovery, the cultivation, and appreciation of superior varieties of fruits and some nuts. NAFEX members, we share ideas, information, experiences, fruit propagating material. We do that through our website, through social media, and we have fruit-specific interest group meetings monthly, and we have annual conferences like this one. Since COVID, these have been online, but we've also done in-person meetups, and we're experimenting a little bit more with some regional meetups. As a paid NAFEX member, you will get 4 editions of the Pomona, which is our quarterly journal, each year. If you're a digital member, you'll get that via email. If you're a full member, you'll get that both by email and through the postal service. And you also have the ability to search through the last 50 years of the Pomona through our website. That's available only to you guys as members. You log in and you can find that, and you can search by keyword or by issue, and there's just a ton of information there. So I really encourage you to check that out if you're new. If you haven't already, we encourage you to visit the website to learn more, and that's nafex.org. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the other Chris Homanix, who will be the moderator for this session, and he will be doing the introduction for our speaker. So Chris, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. It's a good evening, and it's going to be a good discussion with Timothy Lane here. And Timothy has a wonderful YouTube channel that I hope he tells you about, where he's been reviewing a whole bunch of different fruits, and he's quite a fruit explorer. And I think you're going to be very excited about this persimmon presentation. So I'll let Timothy introduce himself and kind of hand it off to him. So Timothy, go ahead, take it away.
All right. Give me just a moment here. Hybrid persimmons. This is what we're here for, right? So that's my intro slide. I'm a tropical person trapped in a temperate climate. So I took naturally to growing persimmons, pawpaws, bananas, anything that has that tropical-esque vibe. I kind of latched onto that. And I started sometime in my late teens, early 20s. That was back when I started my first nursery around 2001 that dealt with cold hardy exotics and tropical-esque plants and trees. My main inspirations are Bill Whitman. He did a book called 5 Decades in Tropical Fruit. That was a major inspiration. And Julia F. Morton, who did Fruits of Warm Climates. She's another inspiration of mine. I've had her book for many decades now. I live in Massachusetts. I'm on about a little less than half an acre, packed with all kinds of fruit trees, mostly pawpaws and persimmons of hybrid and American persuasion. I deal in fruit, seed, scions, and saplings. And I use what's around. I grow and eat what I like. And my personality type, I guess we can skip that part. Anyway, um, this is the beginning. The beginning was Rasayanka. Now, this original mix was uh, originated in 1959. It's often exaggerated as new, but it's not. It's old. It's over 60 years old now. And Rasayanka is the first. Nikita's Gift is the second. That one came about 15, 20 years later. So Nikita is going on 50 years old in a couple of years, and these things are still thought of as new here in the United States. Now, the cold hardiness on Nikita's Gift is often exaggerated in advertising. You'll see it sometimes put as zone 6 or zone 5 even. This is not at all true. Nikita tops out or bottoms out at around zone 6B. I've tried her in 6A and she persists for maybe half a decade or more and then just dies from one of those free cold events we get every half decade or so. The thing about Rasayanka is that she has a long seasonal window. So from waking up in spring to falling asleep in fall, she requires a certain number of heat hours to ripen her wood. And that's something we don't seem to get up here in the Northeast. And I've killed 2 Rasayankas over the years trying to figure that out. And it wasn't elucidated to me until I started talking to people like Arneo Peterson several years ago that it was a wood ripening issue. And so that was my perspective on that particular hybrid. Now there's some Japanese hybrids that I'll talk about a little bit. There's some 3rd generation Ukrainians like the Gora series. There's American hybridization efforts by Cliff England, Jerry Lehman, Donald Compton, and the late David Laverne. And then there's the 4th generation, many of which are Ukrainian, but there's also some Americans as well. So let's go ahead and get into this. What is the hybrid persimmon? Well, it's a combination of 2 species. One is passively domesticated to some unknown extent, Diospyros virginiana, but only recently captured and refined. Early golden, maybe the oldest collection still around that is still propagated today. There's one heavily domesticated ancestor with thousands of years of cultivation heritage, Diospyros khaki, and that has a rich history in China, Korea, Japan, and later on in parts of Europe, Italy, and Spain. These 2 species would never have met each other without human interaction. So it's something deliberate, and that's why I use the word cultigen for it, because it wouldn't exist without people. And another point I like to make is that it's an example of a more wild fruit like Diospyros virginiana having a better flavor than some of the cultivated counterparts. You'll notice the same thing with blueberries and other wild berries as well. Well, it's the same with the persimmon. People like to eat what tastes good. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, there are native ranges for all of these different persimmons. The North American persimmon is native to the southeast, and you see I roughly put a line where the division between 90 chromosome and 60 chromosome is. Above the Ohio River, you have 90 chromosome, and below you have the 60 chromosome. And the difference is important because you're getting into cold hardiness when you talk about these different races of persimmon. So you'll get more cold hardiness out of a northern 90 chromosome than you will out of a southern. And here's the native range of Diospyros khaki on the other side. That is Indo-Asian. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have as specific a map for it, but yeah, bear that in mind, the cold hardiness thing and the 90 chromosome persimmons, because it'll come in handy as we go on. So the 2 races, 60s and 90s. The 90s, the northern leaves tend to have larger, more ovate, oblong, fuzzy shoots and leaves. And I actually have some examples of the northern here. This came off of my proc tree. You can see it's a larger leaf. And this came off of a southern tree, which I ordered from Florida. It's actually a South Florida representative. two different races, two different chromosome counts, and you see the subtle differences. The southern is a smaller leaf in general. It's a more glabrous plant overall, and it's less hardy. So the southern will top out around zone 6B, 7-ish. The northern, you get a lot more hardiness out of it. It'll go, in some cases, into zone 4. Now, this is where you find the cold hardy rootstocks. The Missouri Forest Service, Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, they all have 90 chromosome rootstocks available in both small and large amounts. And I don't know that anyone had compiled a list until recently, but their quality is variable. The best ones I've gotten have been from the Missouri Forest Service. I'm just trying Maryland this year. Kentucky gave me pretty good quality roots, but this is where I tend to look. And when you're ordering rootstock, you want to order the closest to your location, either geographically or climate zone wise, because that will benefit you in the long run for the cold hardiness of the rootstock itself. All right, basics for taking care of hybrid persimmons. This is imperative is to wrap the graft unions for the first few years, protect your younger trees. I can't overemphasize this point enough. It's one of those more sensitive grafts. When you first graft them, they are prone to getting zapped by cold, and that is something that I am constantly attending to in winter. And there's a slide later on that shows how I do it. But basic tree care, mulch, weed, prune, and feed. I find in an adult persimmon, say over 10 years old, that good pruning results in a fruit size boost. Persimmons, the rootstocks anyhow, they like a slightly acid soil with access to nitrogen, potassium, but not too wet. They don't like a very wet soil, but they're otherwise not that picky. People who've grown persimmons note this, that they're not the pickiest species, and that's to our benefit as well. Now, this is something Cliff tipped me off on a few years ago, the method of grafting low and burying the unions if you're worried about cold temps in your climate. Persimmon is an easily graftable species. I'm a beginner intermediate grafter, and I have no problems with persimmon, especially with bark inlay and tea budding grafts. So if you're just starting out grafting, know that persimmon is relatively easier than some. I recommend not tea budding. I recommend bark inlay for beginners. That's a very easy graft. And 2 out of 3 that I did in the past several years have taken. So I can usually rely on that. Things about fruit drop. Fruit drop in persimmon can be a temporary fit of a tree's adolescence. I have a proc that is 9 years old that refuses to hold fruit. And this can be rather irritating because you want to see this tree full of fruit, and it just will set all these flowers and then drop all of them. Some cultivars are more prone to it. Age, genetic, climatic, nutritional variables, they all affect fruit holding to some extent. Some cultivars like 100-46, Lehman's Delight, they like to hold their fruit, or the Ukrainian cultivar Pervixta likes to hold fruit. It'll start young and it'll keep holding all its fruit. So, there's genetic factors there as well. Now, talking about wood ripening is an interesting thing. As I mentioned earlier, wood ripening can be all over the place with the hybrids. Rossyonka seems to require a longer seasonal window than others. The new Dar Sofievki seems to have a short seasonal window, which is good. That opens up more possibility for the Northeast. Goro Roman Kosh as well has a short ripening window. And this is very beneficial for people, especially up in my part of the world, who want to grow large, delicious persimmons. And there's also the probable rootstock influence for leafing out in spring. So if you use a 60 chromosome up in somewhere in Massachusetts, that may leaf out later than if you'd had to use a 90 chromosome. So that's another benefit to using the 90 chromosome rootstocks in the north. So in general, khakis come from a climate with long, hot summers and mild winters, right? And some of this preference is related to the hybrids. Like I feel Rossayanka received more of that long seasonal window type genetics than Dar Sophie did. So these are things to bear in mind. I tend not to think of cold hardiness as an absolute number, and I encourage people to think of it as a fuzzy gradient, and I'll often express it as a small range. Some cultivars are more hardy in short intervals of harsh cold. My Gora Roman Kosh came through negative 16 degrees Fahrenheit last early spring, and it would have surely died at prolonged exposure to those temperatures. My Nikita's Gift died at a wild swing from 40 down to negative 16. It had survived that temperature before, but not that wild fluctuation. So there's all these variables when dealing with cold hardiness. And I'm encouraging people to think of it more as a plastic concept than an absolute. Now, roots are usually the hardiest part of any tree, followed by the trunk and major branches. And this is something I learned growing jackfruits in zone 9B Florida, is that the shoots die back first, then the big branches, and then the trunk, and then you're dead to the roots. And it's kind of in that sequence. And then there's also the question of rootstock influence on that cold tolerance, another variable to consider. So like I said, grafting low and burying the union. This is something that Cliff tipped me onto a few years ago. Very smart. These are a few that I have done myself: Zimakerma, Pervixta, and Kujinaja. Notice the failed graft over here on Kujinaja. I often forget what I graft and just assume it'll take when I do 3 grafts. So, but yeah, this is insurance against extreme cold events. And they will eventually be mounded up with dirt and buried as insurance against the harsh winters. Wood ripening, we're talking about that a little bit already. Much like fruit ripens, wood also has to ripen in order for a tree to achieve full dormancy. So the less ripe the wood is, the less dormancy it has. Green new shoots are very tender. I know Buzz was telling me that he gets 25-degree temperature sometime toward the end of December, and all of his green new shoots just turn black from that. The semi-hardwood has a little more cold resistance, but is generally still pretty tender. And it's that protracted autumn with cool nights and later frosts that are beneficial to help the tree harden off and gradually acclimate to these conditions. But you do need that long, warm, heat unit-filled summer to eventually ripen to the full potential dormancy of the tree. So first-year grafts have trouble with this sometimes. If I graft something in early July, for instance, it may not grow enough and ripen up enough to get through that first winter it needs in order to leaf out normally the next spring. So I often resort to protecting them. And that's what this slide is about. And it's fairly intuitive, protecting a young grafted sapling. I use felt wrap, tree protectors, polar fleece, blankets, blanket tents, cheap greenhouses. This is one I got recently here on the big picture. Use your intuition, get creative. It buffers the temperatures and reduces stress overall on the graft. I use the greenhouses only during extreme cold events, say when we get into February, March, and we're going to hit -10, -15, which happens once in a while. I will put out the greenhouse around my really important stuff for that. And it's important to remember that extreme heat fluctuations from hot to cold can also be stressful. So don't, leave your greenhouse up and out all winter on it, because that is a problem as well. Wind is not your friend with these things. I find more frustration from the wind just blowing them over than about anything else. So bear that in mind. But in terms of wind chill affecting the actual trees and the shoots themselves, it's kind of a negligible factor in the long run. You'll find you have good results from just protecting in small ways like this. All right. The hybrids are not very straightforward in terms of their compatibility. Hermy hybrids, the hermaphrodites, are most universally compatible. So a cultivar like Chuchupaca or Bozidar, which bears male and female flowers, can go either way. It'll pollinate with Khaki or Virginiana. Crossing between Virginiana and Khaki, this is problematic. This is something that I believe Cliff has done a few times. I'm not sure exactly how, but it is. This is just basically an overview of how they are compatible. And bear in mind, this is to a degree as well. There's a lot of aborts going in any direction. It's just more compatibility between these two and these two than across the entire spectrum. So the phenotypes of persimmon, it's very complex. I didn't even want to touch on this topic because it is a lot to think about. Both Khaki and Virginiana are dominantly dioecious. Monoecious and androdioecious and trimonoecious individuals exist. Most of the selective cultivars are gynoecious. Those are just your standard female parthenocarpic bearing cultivars. Some are hermy like Bozidar, Nikita Thor C5, Chuchupaca. And an interesting point is that some of the dominantly females will produce occasional male flowers, some regularly, some under certain conditions, and the occasional male branches on these dominantly female trees will produce female offspring, which is beneficial for breeding, one, and two is just really neat. This was James Claypool's observation, I believe. Many, if not most, cultivar females are parthenocarpic. They bear fruit without pollination, therefore without seeds. And the interesting thing is that this is true of many cultivated trees in the Diospyros genus. It's not just the classic persimmons that do this. There's a couple examples here on the left. I took these photos in Hawaii and Barbados. This is the black sapote, which is the same deal. You know, it has the issue of monoacy in persimmons goes back deep into the roots of the evolution of dioacy and the evolution of a Y chromosome in plants and trees. It's a fascinating topic if you have the time to look into it. Pollination, does it prevent fruit drop? There was a study on Hatchia that showed when they used D. virginiana pollen in a khaki grove that the fruit hold significantly increased. So that was something I was reading about recently. But from what I understand about the parthenocarpic D. virginiana cultivars, the standard stuff that we all know and love, the pollination doesn't seem to affect fruit hold that much. How does this relate into the hybrids? Well, European growers report increased fruit hold with hybrids on hybrid pollination. Cultivars like Bozidar, Chuchupaca. There's a cultivar called Universal, which may be the same thing as Chuchupaca. That tends to cause the hybrids to hold more of their fruit. This is what I hear anecdotally from people who grow them overseas. But is this true of Khaki crossed with hybrid or Virginiana crossed with hybrid? More info needed. So Khaki and hybrid, perhaps yes. Virginiana, perhaps not. I won't put a solid line on it. All right, now that we're getting through this technical stuff, let's meet some of these hybrids. I did this slide earlier today to show the leaf morphology, the diversity. You can see some of them appear more Virginiana, like Dar Sofievki. Even despite being 93% Khaki, she still looks more Virginiana. And that's very curious. Nikitskaya Bordovaya, Nikita's gift looks very much Khaki, and she's 75% Khaki. But this kind of goes to show you that the traits can be all over the map when you're dealing with hybrids. And so, yeah, I just love looking at the leaves. Sometimes I go out in my grove and just ogle the leaves for a while because they're so unique and very cool. So the point of hybrids, what is the point? Well, in my opinion, they have some of the best flavor of persimmons. The American persimmon that you're familiar with has the smaller fruit, right? It's rich, more intense, rum caramel, burnt sugar, apricot dipped in wildflower honey type of flavor. That really rum liquor flavor is probably one of my very favorites. Now, the Asian persimmon is agreeably sweet, agreeably mild with some woodiness. None of the American persimmons characteristic wilderness. You know, that's one of those things that you want to taste more of in an Asian persimmon now that you've had an American. Hybrid is a mixed bag. Some hybrids taste of khaki, some of American, and some equally both, and in different ways. Let's start with one that tastes like equally both, Rasa Yonka. This one, you'll see the advertisers saying that it tastes like khaki, but it tastes like both, and strongly and equally. So it's hard to describe the flavor. It's like someone decided that they should come head to head in one fruit, and they meet right in the middle. It's very, very cool. Nikita's Gift, for those of you who haven't had Nikita's Gift, she is a sugar bomb. There's a lot of sugar going on in that fruit. So it's not for a palate like mine that likes a little tartness in their fruit, but for people with a big sweet tooth, it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Mikusu JTO2. This is one of the Japanese hybrids I mentioned at the beginning. It is a full 50-50 hybrid. It's been in the US almost 20 years now. It's different than Rasa Yonka, even despite being a full 50-50 hybrid. It's a honeyed sweetness, sticky with kind of a crumbly skin. The parent, who is a D. virginiana, is an unknown called Josephine. It's still a mystery, but based on descriptions of its bearing habits, Buzz Fervor surmises it could be John Hershey's fruit dump cultivar, cultivar that dumps all its fruit at once over a week or so. Other thing about Mikusu JTO2 is that it is slow, very slow. I've yet to meet one that grows at any pace more than half your normal persimmon pace. Cliff's tree is maybe about as tall as I am, a little taller, and it's 20-something years old, I believe. It's a very slow grower. So that's one of the downsides to Mikusu. It is delicious, but it is incredibly slow. Lacks the hybrid vigor. Zima Kurma, NBO2. This is the other Japanese hybrid. This is interesting because it's 75% khaki, but the cold hardiness is negative 16 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So where does that come from? You know, it shows that latent cold hardy genes that came over from D. virginiana are still prevalent even in 75% khaki trees. And the flavor on this one is not that great, to be honest. I've not tasted it personally, but I know from its progeny that it is very, very sweet. It's a sugar bomb like its parents, Taishu and Nikita. They're both very, very sweet persimmons. Now, Taishu is one of those interesting parents. It's used in a lot of breeding programs in Japan because it bears male flowers. It's a very sweet persimmon, a large PCNA type, and it's very frost tender. So that's puzzling that you would be able to cross Taishu with Nikita's Gift and get something even hardier than its parentage suggests. Bliznetsnaya and Kudinaya. These are Cliff England's original crosses of Castara X Rasa Yonka male. You may have heard about these. One of them is PCNA. That means it's not astringent when it gets pollinated. I had the opportunity to taste it last month. They're both very good. It's more complicated than a khaki, and I like it. I just put them in this spring out in my own grove. I'm hoping to get more taste experience with it, but I found them very interesting, very good. This is the second generation cultivar. Journey is another one of Cliff's, 12.5% khaki. It's one of the lesser khakis. Early fruiting, vanilla flavored, more vigorous than some. This guy grows about a third faster than a lot of mine. That could be a rootstock influence, or it could be characteristic of the cultivar. I don't know yet. But the leaves are very Virginiana, speaking to, directly to its 87.5% Virginiana heritage. And this shows my favorite labeling system, just off chance, the cattle tags. If you're wondering what to label your trees with, cattle tags, they don't get messed up. It's great. Cassandra. Now, Cassandra is an interesting thing because there was a fruit from Ukraine called Sosnovskaya, which is almost, I don't want to say identical, but they are head-to-head competitors in terms of their fruit quality. They're both really, really good. the issue with Cassandra, and I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, I know a couple growers up here who have had issues with the wood ripening on time in the Northeast. Now that could be due to a recent graft, not making it through one winter, or it could be part of the cultivar's fruit ripening or wood ripening overall. I'm not sure. But this is something that I'm determined to find out. I'm grafting another Cassandra this spring on a larger rootstock, so I can hopefully ascertain some of this. David's candy corn. This is Cliff's more recent release. David Laverne hybridized the seed. Cliff germinated it and later planted it out in his trial plot. It's an upright form, big fruits. It has smaller leaves, more khaki-esque, a little bit elongated. I've not tasted this one. I hear great things about it. I know a lot of Cliff's hybrids have more of the American persimmon dominance, and that's something that I really like, so I'll be happy to taste this one when I finally get fruit from it. Dr. Kazas, this is a Jerry Lehman cultivar. It's a Nikita crossed with unknown Virginiana pollen, 37.5% khaki. The fruit itself is about the size of a large Virginiana and deep orange. It's very delicious. It's one of the best persimmons I've tasted. I strongly recommend this cultivar. It's hardy down to the negative 15, 16-ish area, maybe more. It's very hardy. So we should be able to grow this in the northern climates up here as well. It does fine over our winters. I've had one in the ground for 2 seasons now. All right, so Ukraine, early 2000s. These are the third generation Ukrainians. We were talking about Rosyanka and Nikita's gift earlier. These are the ones that came after those. And they've only recently reached the US the past few years, but they've been around in Ukraine since the early 2000s at least. Gora Rogers is the first one. Her wood ripening is good. She seems to survive our winters up here just fine. The leaves are very Nikita's gift-like. She's generally stated as more delicious than Gora Goverla. I use Gora Goverla as kind of a benchmark for the Gora series. Gora Goverla is one that tastes very mild, almost bland. It's not that good, but Roman Kosh and Gora Rogers are supposedly better. Roman Kosh and Rogers are brother and sister. Now, Roman Kosh has the same wood ripening, so she's good in more northerly sites, just like Gora Rogers is. Larger leaf, ornamental foliage. The thing about Roman Kosh is that she's not precocious. I've seen her growing in 3 different locations, and one of them in Pennsylvania, she'd been in the ground for 5 years and still had not made a flower or a fruit. Which is very interesting. Well, maybe she made a flower, but she's not made a fruit in any case. The flavor is khaki dominant with a hint of the American Persimmons Wilderness. I got to try this one at Cliff's last month. Very, very good. So Gora Roman Kosh scores very high on my list of hybrid cultivars that people should have. Now, the genuine item is as wide as it is tall. It's not flattish or oblate as you see in Ukraine advertising. Apparently they took some random khaki and threw that into the Gora Roman Kosh advertising at some point. But the real deal is this one you see with the measurements in the picture. And my tree has been throwing some male flowers this fall. Those freakish male flowers you see in fall sometimes. We don't know if that's routine or a fluke. I heard someone told me that Cliff has male flowers on his. So that could be something that it does as well, is make male flowers. Gora Goverla. This is the big guy. I have this one right here. It is a big fruit. Golf ball size. No, not golf. Tennis ball size. This one. Possibly the least cold hardy of the Goras. She was rated at -8 degrees Fahrenheit. But I think she can handle more. I'm testing her this winter, her first winter. We'll see. It's a precocious tree. So unlike her brothers, Gora Rogers and Roman Kosh, she is precocious. She'll make a lot of fruit within her first few years, and they're even sized. The branches are loaded, and it's a good decent commercial quality fruit. But compared to the other two, Rogers and Roman Kosh, she is kind of bland. So it's a very typical khaki flavor, not much American character at all. But aside from that, she is fairly worthwhile. All right, the fourth generation. This is the one that people are getting excited about. This is 2010s and beyond. Let's start with Gift of Sofievka, Dar Sofievki. This is the exciting one. She is substantially hardy. I've had her in the ground 3 years, and she shows no signs of dieback. She showed no signs of stress, even through last year's -16 swing in temperature. She is really interesting in that she looks like she's made of plastic. You know, that's the thing about this entire cultivar, is that it looks like it's made of plastic, not a trace of fuzz on her. The fruits are squarish, oblate, and the flavor I hear is excellent. People rave about it. I've not had the pleasure of tasting it yet. I'm hoping next season I'll see my first fruit and flower. I'm hoping. The foliage is also unique. It's more or less elliptic and entirely glabrous, you know, smooth. The one problem with Sophie that I've seen so far is that the past 2 years she gets persimmon leaf spot. It's that fungal disease that makes big black spots on your persimmon leaves. She seems prone to that, and I've seen it in Pennsylvania too. She seemed to do that as well. Sofievka is a park, not a person. I called her Sophie's Gift kind of tongue-in-cheek because the name Nikita's Gift came from the corrupted Nikitskaya Bordovaya. So I figured, why not continue in that tradition? I'm beginning to regret it based on some responses I've gotten. But she's 93% khaki, but has all of the hardiness characteristics of Virginiana. Very, very unique cultivar and has a very bright future ahead of her. Sosnovskaya. This is the one that's a head-to-head competitor with Cassandra. She has a similar shape fruit. The flavor is not precisely the same, but she has her own unique American wilderness going on inside of her flavor. It's sweet. I'm at a loss to describe precisely the character of the flavor, but she is very good. If you eat this persimmon, you'll like it. I guarantee you will. Acorn shaped, sweet, yeah, whatever else I said. And there's a further cultivar derived from her. I believe it's a seedling that's not yet in the US, Jubilee Kasenko or Juliet Kasenko. I'm trying to get that one in. It's an issue trying to find scion for some of these. So Adolf Leshuk. This is Dar Sofievki's twin brother, you could call him. He's the hardiest of the fourth generation. Down to -18 degrees Fahrenheit, at least for brief periods. I'm told the fruits are not as good as Sosnovskaya, but the cold hardiness makes this guy worthwhile. He's very, very cold hardy, and that is a good quality to have if you're interested in breeding, or if you're just interested in growing in climates that won't support persimmons normally. Bozidar. This is God's gift. It's a hermaphrodite. It has a large fruit that has the same shape as Nikita's Gift, but it's a bit larger. I don't recall the exact gram weights, but cold hardiness is at least to the low negative teens, and that's good for where I am, at least, zone 6A. It overwintered twice for me before it got zapped by last year's -16, so I'm trying it again. And that's what I do a lot of the time, is I'll keep trying until I give up on something. You try 3 times before you give up on it completely. But yeah, it's good for breeding efforts. It's basically a cornerstone hybrid pollinator. And I'm told that pollinators like Bozidar will increase fruit hold on hybrids. So this would be an important one to have for that purpose as well. It's also known as UKR 1530 and is being passed around as 1530. It's from the Brito Victor Derevyanko in Ukraine. This is perhaps the most interesting of the recent fourth generation hybrids, Pamyati Cherniev's memory. it has a big old leaf scar. I noticed when I first received Scion, what was it, last season, I noticed the big old leaf scars like swooping into the stick itself. It was really peculiar. Um, the tree has a lot of vigor for me. I've grafted 2 different individuals, and it grows real quick. So that's a plus as well. The hardiness is allegedly on par with Nikita, maybe slightly less. We don't know. There was one website that reported it as being PVNA, also unknown. There are male flowered clones of this cultivar. Now that is a good thing because that means we can cross back to Virginiana to get a big fruit. So the male flowered clones of this have the potential to help breed more larger, dominantly American persimmon flavored fruits. So big fruit genes. That's a cool thing. Chuchupaca. This one I know the least about. I know it's significantly hardy, -16 at least. The flavor is very sweet, and you'll see this said about a lot of persimmons is that it's a sugar bomb. The cool thing about this one is look at that blue tone that it develops. That's a really nice manna from heaven type fruit. When you cut it open, it's just beautiful. And this cultivar is also known as universal. That's right. In Ukraine, they call this one universal because it makes male flowers as well. There's some additional selections. Some of them are good, some of them are so-so. My favorite hybrid that I got to try last month was one called UKR 15-9. It's an unreleased selection by Victor Derivianco, Ukraine. Exquisite flavor. It's really, really good. Dominantly American with a khaki outer texture, crumbly skin, jelly in the middle. I cannot say enough good things about it. I have 2 out in my grove. I'm just waiting for them to bear fruit. Some of the others from Ukraine are 12-21, 15-9. Some of the others from this side of the ocean are Sestronka. That's a Lehman hybrid. It is less hardy than any of the other hybrids. It's even less hardy than a few khakis. So I've seen this one growing in Pennsylvania, and it dies back in zone 6B almost every year. So you'd want to grow it in a place where you could feasibly have it, and you want to grow it for the flavor. I'm told it's worth it for the flavor, but in terms of anything other, it's not that great. Proc Hokkaido, that's another England cultivar. That one, you'll find a lot of people who attended his tasting last month were raving about Proc X Hokkaido. I'm not sure which one of his Proc Hokkaidos, but one of them is just outstanding. MP3, Whopper, Succulent, these are ones that I have in my grove. They're allegedly large fruit. Whopper is allegedly hardy down to -16 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the magical number, -16 apparently. But it also makes a very large fruit as well. Succulent, Okja. There's another Ukrainian called Pamiati Tethris, which I know very little about. And there's a few bud sports out there. For anyone who's dealt with breeding persimmons, you know that bud sports are the source of many new and novel cultivars. Like Matsumoto Fuyu is a bud sport. Saijo is a bud sport. And there are some bud sports of Rasayanka. There's one called Super Rasayanka, which is about twice the size of a normal Rasayanka. And then there's one called Pamiati Patsankova, which is another bud sport of Rasayanka. And then there's Sovietsky, which is a bud sport of Super Rasayanka that's even bigger. So we have all of these interesting mutations going on as well. And these are things that, can be discovered at random in people's groves. And if you can identify one, you can have, one that's actually better and different than the cultivar it's on, you can have your own cultivar. So that's very interesting. So we'll talk just a little bit about what makes persimmons astringent. It's caused by condensed tannins in the vacuoles of the cells. They form during the development of the fruit. The cultivars that are PCNA, non-astringent, the accumulation of tannins in the cells terminates at an early stage of development, whereas in a normal astringent persimmon, they continue to form all the way up until the fruit turns ripe, at which point they lose the astringency, which is not just a decrease in the overall tannin content, but also because soluble tannins turn into insoluble forms. They get bound up and no longer affect the proteins on the human tongue. And they use a different classification system, PCA, PCNA, PVA. Yep, let's go back, sorry. PVA and PVNA to classify the different persimmons. And so wherever you see these letters, that's how you know what the persimmons, the situation with the astringency of the persimmon is. Now, talking a little bit about the future of the hybrids. I know there are projects out there to develop a PCNA hybrid. This is very interesting. Crispy persimmons are probably the most popular forms of the fruit consumed worldwide. Some of the things that we need to think about when dealing with a PCNA hybrid project are the Japanese cultivars that are astringent are based on a recessive genetic character. Basically, you have to line up six different recessive markers to get the non-astringent offspring. So, and further, the use of the JPCNA khaki males like Shogatsu, Taishu, they may result in unwanted aborted seeds from inbreeding depression on top of the numerous hybrid aborts. So these projects are looking to get certain Chinese flower pollen because the Chinese have a dominant gene, and there's much better odds of a PCNA offspring. Say instead of 1 to 1,000, it would be 1 to several hundred. And that would drastically reduce the waste output, make it far less work. So the hypothetical for these projects is that you'd start with something like Makusu, Garsovifi, Lishuk, test plots in climate zones 5 and 6. The hardiness would be unknown. You'd let nature sort it out for you. The thing with these is that the hybrid genome contains more or less the entire history of whatever you've crossed it with. So traits are all over the map. Cold hardiness is in one area. The leaf shape is in another area. It's all over the place with hybrids. It's a complete gamble. You don't know what you're going to get, but you can do the shotgun approach and just throw stuff out there and see what sticks. Now, this sort of project could be accomplished by hobby growers in an amateur fashion. I will always advocate the usefulness and importance of amateurs because there's simply more of us, right? We are an important part of the process. The two main things that are difficult to overcome in this are cold climate astringency and early ripening, both of the wood and the fruit. Astringency is linked to cold climate ripening. So if you have a non-astringent persimmon, you're trying to grow it in a cold climate, it will tend to be more astringent than it normally would. That's one of the hurdles to overcome. And then the ripening of the wood, as we talked about earlier, is also another issue. The astringent locus in khaki persimmons is known about and purportedly used to guide breeding, but knowledge of the full genome remains limited. The Virginiana genome is still largely unknown. So in the future, we'll have many studies of khaki and other Diospirus, and they will apply to Virginiana to some extent. We don't know what extent. We'll have other genetic marker locus guided breeding. We'll have the ability to screen and eliminate males while young. There are researchers in Japan and China who are developing ways to analyze the leaf for certain hormones that are associated with male and female plants. So we'll be able to analyze the leaf while it's still a seedling and eliminate it early. Another thing we may be able to do is turn on and off male and female in monoecious trees. So I was reading or hearing about Jerry Lehman and him using a chemical to change Rosayanka over into a male. And that is something that could become commonplace in persimmon breeding. And we also need a further understanding of what controls female flowering in the female trees. We understand the male flowering to some extent. There's hormones in the flowers themselves that set off certain reactions that cause the flower to develop male or develop female. but we don't understand what really controls the female flowering. So, yeah, I don't know how quickly I burned through a lot of this, but I want to give special thanks to Cliff England, who's out in the audience, I'm sure. Thank you. Dax Herbs, Buzz Fervor, Chris Hominix, Arniel Peterson, anyone who's humored or furthered my obsession with this fruit or fruit in general, thank you. Yeah, there's a few references here for some of the citations. I could talk a little bit about grafting if we have a minute. I mentioned grafting earlier. These are the two methods that I use. I'm an intermediate grafter, beginning intermediate. So I recommend bark inlay most of all. That one is easy, high success. Tea budding, if you're a little more deft with utensils, tea budding is also very high success, but bark inlay is just so easy. And it works most of the time. So that's what I recommend for people starting out grafting. Yeah, I think that concludes what I have to say about these persimmons, and I can open it up now to people who want to answer or ask questions.
Oh, that was great talk, man. That was really good. I liked when you were talking about bark inlay and you had that picture of the dog saying, "I don't know what I'm doing." And
Yeah,
I'm like, bark inlay.
right.
Um, Eric Bina, he made a comment. Start off here. I've grown both 90 and 60 chromosome in Florida, and the 90 always leaves out later. And then he also followed up with a question
Cool.
just down here. He said, "Do you know anything about the hybrids growing in the deep south? I mean, South Florida, where it gets too warm for straight khaki to reliably fruit."
That's a very good question. I know someone, Paul Zamoda, he is growing several of the hybrids successfully. So it's one of those things where you have to try it to find out. I know that you can. He's somewhere down near Orlando, I believe, and he's been doing it successfully for several years. But it's the other end of the hardiness scale, where we're trying for cold up here, we're trying for heat down there. You'd have to try, it's hard to say.
Josh Jameson was he's in Florida. He,
Yes.
he's on the northern end of the tropical range, and
Yep.
he was growing with success Diospyros californica, which is a bit like
Ooh,
Texana and a
yeah,
bit like Niagara. So anyway, that's another thing you could try.
cool.
Rocco Percivali says, "What do you use to wrap your graft unions?"
To wrap them, I
Yeah.
use felt tree wrap. So that's that thick green stuff that I showed in the slide earlier. It's basically a flat 3-inch wide piece of felt that you twirl up the tree. And I do that for any tender graft, first year, second year, sometimes the third year. It totally depends on how the graft looks.
Uh, Ryan Mahoney says something, and I've been interested in this. I don't think anybody's doing it, but it'd be a project for somebody. And I think it'd be worthwhile for a lot of people in colder zones. But he asked, he says, "Timothy, do you select rootstock seedlings that leaf out later compared to siblings? I've begun to consider that variable, especially for more marginally hardy varieties."
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful thing to try. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this leafing out earlier versus later thing, and I know that you do want the more northerly stuff. You want to give them the best possible chance at getting that long flower to ripe fruit window, and the most heat hours. And then there's the question, of course, of whether or not the rootstock influences how much heat hours the stuff grafted on it will need. These are all variables that we don't really know much about. So yeah, I would say that's awesome that you're experimenting with these things, and I think it's important to do. It'll be very helpful for people who want to grow persimmons in colder climates. Yeah.
There's been a number of questions about rootstock selection. So, for instance, and then also rooting above the graft union. So Chris Cohen says, "Does rootstock not root out from above the graft union if mounded with dirt or mulch? around the graft unit. I know this is a concern with other plants. It is not a concern with persimmon, and it could also be the opposite way, Chris. Like sometimes people want it to root, like jujube.
Yeah.
But do you want to chime in on that? And then also Caitlin asked, just kind of like related,
Mhm.
are any of these varieties on their own roots?
All these varieties on their own roots. Well, there's the issue of being able to clone persimmons, which itself is tricky. So most of them are on rootstocks. You know, I I know you can clone persimmons, but I don't know how. You know, it's very hard. Um, in terms of rootstocks, what was the other question? Sorry.
Oh, basically, are there negative effects
Negative
from
effects.
mounding up
Okay.
above the graft unit? And
Right.
also, are they going to go on their own roots at that eventually? And is that a good thing or bad thing? I know,
Yeah.
Chris, that's not quite what you asked, but I'm kind of extrapolating a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
to suss out some more answers.
I haven't noticed any detrimental effects from mounding up above the graft, but then I do graft really, really low sometimes. Like I'll sometimes dig out under the soil line and graft down there and then mound it back up. So, you know, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference whether I mound the soil up above the natural soil line or under it, you know. So I don't notice anything anyway.
And then so there's been some other questions about like matching up rootstocks with varieties.
Hmm.
So, or I mean rootstocks with different species and the
Yeah.
hybrids. So
Hmm.
like there's been several, but one here, Christy Garner
Yeah.
asked, have you come across any research on varieties of persimmons? Oh, excuse me, that's another one she asked. Uh, what what is your experience in rootstock compatibility with persimmon hybrids? And then Project Pawpaw asks, what traits, if any, have you found to be affected by rootstock selection? So if we can kind of touch on
Hmm.
those.
What traits, if any? It's interesting questions. Rootstocks. You know, when I'm dealing with rootstocks, I'll often do a couple things. I'll make sure that it's northern, unless I'm experimenting with the southern rootstock, which I do have a few out there. But yeah, I don't put much more thought into it other than make sure it's northern and make sure it's local. You know, that's pretty much the extent of my thought is that because you want something that is nearest your climate zone, um, that will benefit you in terms of just being overall compatible to where you're growing. And then you have the issue of hold on a second, losing my trains of thought here. Sorry. Yeah, the rootstocks are. This is a difficult question. It's kind of got me stumped. I don't put much more thought than that into it. Just make sure it's local and make sure it's good to your climate zone. You know, those are the two criteria that I go by. I haven't done much experiment with rootstock other than that. So I suppose I can't really speak too much more than that.
Mm. Out here, I just use Virginiana, but I know in California, they'll use like Lotus or
Lotus.
Khaki for khaki. And the hybrids, they do find in Virginiana. But I know that there's concern, and I haven't done this myself, but I've
Oh,
heard that
yeah.
there's concern putting Virginiana on Lotus.
Hmm.
So it might extend that there might be some issue with putting Lotus
Ah, yes.
on that. And then Lotus or the hybrid on khaki, I've heard works fine. Rooting khaki, I've heard it works. They're stubborn, and that the roots can be kind of weak on some of the
Hmm.
varieties.
Yeah.
Um, Mike T says, is growing out, this is interesting, is growing out meter seeds as cold hardy rootstock worth the effort?
Meter seeds. You know, that's something that Buzz Ferber could probably answer that. I'm thinking that it doesn't make that much difference. You'll probably get
Yeah.
a little bit of cold hardiness, maybe a degree or two, but not much. I mean, if you're just getting the most northerly stuff you can find, say from Pennsylvania or from Missouri, get the most northerly stuff you can find. You're probably in the same ballpark already. So
Matthew, a lot of rootstock questions. I just kind of want to get a lot of those out of the way. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
kind of lumping those together. But Matthew Ferrero says, how do we make sure our rootstock is northern? I received 2 American persimmons and planted them, hoping to use them as a rootstock. Maybe you could show that slide again between
Yeah.
the 2 types.
Yeah, let me jump back to that. All right. This is the slide here. Nurseries, they'll use what's available to them. And, a lot of the time it's just random seedlings. So whenever you order anything from anyone, you never know what you're going to get. In likelihood, it's probably Southern, uh, just because there's more of it, more nurseries down toward the southeast that are sending persimmon type stuff up north. Um, I've noticed that the differences between the northern and southern are mostly in the glabrousness of the plant. So you want to look at the leaves and the twigs, and you'll notice that they'll be smooth, very, very smooth. The more northern ones have a bit of tomentum on them. They're fuzzy, and they're a little bit thicker, a little chunkier than your southern. So that's the main difference that I notice. So yeah, check for thin petioles, uh, thin twigs, and smoothness.
Um, Switching gears here a little bit, Kevin and somebody else liked this one, so I just thought I'd kind of change gears here. We've talked about rootstock for a while, but
Yep.
Kevin asks, is the issue of wood ripening also a factor with other types of fruit trees,
Oh yeah,
apple, plum, etc.? Of course,
of
right?
course.
And I
Yeah,
love the
yeah.
idea of this and haven't come across the term. So,
Yep. Yeah, it's been an issue with my pawpaws as well. Um, I know that was something that Arniel Peterson expressed to me years ago when I began testing pawpaws up here. He said, just beware the wood ripening. You may not have enough summer heat hours to ripen up everything to proper dormancy. And those words, they sat with me, and I realized how much that it applies to almost everything, and especially when you're dealing with novel cultigens like these persimmons. They're all over the place in terms of how much heat hours they require to ripen their wood, and you don't get that deep dormancy without it. So, yeah.
Ed Campbell asks, how cold sensitive would a young whip tongue graft be on a 3-year-old Virginianus seedling in zone 6B, so 0 to 20 degrees in extreme events?
That's a good question. I would protect it. I can't speak exactly to whip and tongue, but I've left some of my bark grafts exposed in zone 6A, and they seem to do okay. These are on larger caliper things. Whenever you're dealing with something young and small, I tend to say you want to protect it from the harshest elements of winter. So when you get down to those low negative temperatures, put a bucket over it or a trash bin or something, just to be sure.
Mike T, kind of following up this theme, Mike T asks, is there any advantage to just winter protecting the successful graft point itself versus the whole top grafted plant? I.e.,
Yes.
is the graft a point of particular winter failure after the initial grafting success?
Yes.
That's a
Yes,
good
it
question.
is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've done a little experimenting with this, and when I wrap just the graft union, it will sometimes uh, keep the points that I wrapped alive and the points that I didn't not alive. And I've seen that happen twice. So, I would say yes, it is more sensitive than the rest of the tree. So I would pay attention to properly insulating that point in particular.
Mm-hmm. Um, and then Joshua says, looking at feeding hogs in the winter, any recommendations of varieties that hold fruit into the winter?
Oh
And
yeah.
Dan says Rosianka holds into January in Virginia, Zone 7 at Edible Landscaping. Uh, something on the trees, if not too much rain, but it never drops, has to be cut from the tree. Early ripening American persimmons tend to quit dropping once the leaves drop. My
Mhm.
thought is the leaves are no longer making acidic or something. Acid, I know what you mean, but I can't
Yeah.
pronounce it. To cause the fruit to drop.
All right. So you're looking for things that hold into the winter and drop later in the season then. I know that Cliff has one called deer candy, and he has another one called buck candy that
Yep.
he has for that purpose specifically. I think one of them is, I think they were actually both Jerry Lehman's originally, but yeah, they hold their fruit well into December, from what I understand, November, December, and drop later in the season. And they do drop eventually, I think, because they're pure American, right? So they should eventually drop. Um, I know a lot of the hybrids don't like to drop. That's one of the things about them is that the fruits are ripe on the tree. Like Nikita's Gift doesn't drop, it just stays on there and you got to snip it off. At least where I am, I've never known if that's a regional thing or what, you know. Um, and I've heard it's true for some khakis as well. I don't know. Interesting question.
And just to say, folks have asked where to acquire some of this material, and buck candy actually is, or sorry, deer candy is actually pretty. It's becoming more and more like a deer feedlot variety.
Yeah,
Um,
you can get it
and
from
so,
Perfect Plants. That's where I got
mhm.
it one. I got one there a few months ago.
I just want to say too, for the person, Joshua, I think it was looking for hogs, Diospyros lotus, just straight up Diospyros lotus. If it'll survive in your climate, it hangs onto the fruit forever, and you can
Nice.
just cut the branches off. It's just so vigorous, and throw it down on the ground. Um,
Nice.
and then speaking about it, continue about availability. Caitlin Chambers says, do you get some of your breeding stock from the USDA GRIN database, or have plans to?
Well, a lot of my stock comes from friends. That's the thing is, if you're asking about, how to import stuff, you have to go through USDA. So, that it starts with the country of origin. You get a phytosanitary certificate, then it comes in through USDA APHIS. That's how I've done some things in the past. Uh, More recently, I've had friends in Chicago and Illinois send me their material, and I don't know where they got it. All I know is that I have it, so it's one of those things.
Let's see. So, man, you guys have dropped a bunch of really good questions here.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Ryan Mahoney says, in response to persimmon cuttings, search for the USDA paper, and this is the title to search for: Rooting of Cuttings of Selected Diospyros virginiana Clonal Rootstocks and Bud Growth in Rooted Cuttings.
Okay.
So it's
Mhm.
rooting of cuttings of selected Diospyros virginiana clonal rootstocks and bud growth in rooted cuttings.
Okay.
And maybe we can cut and paste that. I don't think I can for the phone. I'm gonna leave it up. If people look in the Q&A, they
Okay.
can see it.
Yeah,
And
no.
then I think it might be good. You address some concepts like the different flowering types. If you could explain that to people, and then
Okay.
also I think it'd be good to explain parthenocarpy to people
Okay.
and what that means.
Okay, so yeah, some of these big words that we're throwing around. Parthenocarpy just means it bears a fruit without seeds. So there's no fertilization event that takes place. It literally just makes its fruit sans pollen, sans any sexual interaction whatsoever. That's parthenocarpy, and persimmons do that. Tropical breadfruits do that. There's several other fruits that do this. I believe it's more common in cultivated fruits than it is in nature. But yeah, that's the meaning of that word. What was the other word people were wondering about?
Oh,
Flower types.
basically, like it would be good to explain dioecious and monoecious, and also some of the specific flowering terms to or persimmons, or seldom seen outside of persimmons.
Yeah. Okay. So uh, Dioecious plants are plants that are male and female. So dioecious, it means they make male and female flowers, right? So monoecious, one, means that they make both flowers on the same tree, male and female on the same tree. So that's dioecious and monoecious. And then there's gynoecious, which simply means that it's female making a fruit. Gynoecious, fruit-bearing female. And then there's andromonoecious, which is a largely male tree that is capable of doing female things, I believe. Um, and then there are the Hermy trees, which are full hermaphrodites. They can do male, female, and anything in between. Those are interesting. Uh, yeah, these are some complicated words here. I don't often use them myself, but yeah,
Yeah.
you have to just look at the word, how it's broken down, break it into pieces, and you can figure it out. Use your intuition. It's not that difficult.
Kind of piggyback on that, Alexander Brand says, any way to induce or encourage formation of male flowers? I've heard early golden will sometimes set male flowers. Zucchus is another one, but
Yep.
I've never seen any on mine. I would like to, so can it pollinate? So it can pollinate my Lena.
Huh. How to induce male flowering? That's a good question. I know that they use certain stress measures in some breeding programs in Japan, like Taishu will throw male flowers when it's stressed in certain ways. I don't know how that applies laterally to D. virginiana. Um, that's a very
I,
good
I,
question.
I
That's a
know they
question for
use silver
Jerry Lehman.
thiosulfate.
Yeah, you may know more about that than I do, but that's a question for Jerry Lehman for sure, if he were still
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I know that he used silver thiosulfate, and
Yeah,
I think that's how he fixed that male Rusianka, which it
yeah,
was used in a bunch of the hybrid crosses. I think maybe to create deer candy.
right,
But
yeah.
Mike T says, here's a good one. Do persimmons perform reasonably well as a multi-grafted 3-in-1 tree?
Well, that's a tricky question
Yeah.
because the way persimmons grow, they're prone to shedding. They self prune as they grow, right? So if you graft three different persimmons on one, you may run the chance of losing that branch eventually to the tree's natural shedding. So I tend to graft one per tree, maybe two, and keep track of where your central leaders are. Keep them out of the shade, you know, that sort of thing.
Mike Amato says at UMass Amherst we have a Nikitas gift that died back significantly with our May 18th frost. This is
Oof.
the second time it has died back during an extreme cold event in the past 10 years. But
Yeah.
like you said, it died back to essentially the main trunk and then fully bounced back this growing season, zone 6A, 5B border.
Yep.
Planted in a somewhat urban setting, maybe
That's where
some
I am.
microclimate effect.
Yeah, I've been out to Amherst a few times. They're very similar climate to me. My Nikita's gift died from the -16 temperature this past winter. I believe that it was due to the major fluctuation. We had a daytime temp of 40 something, and then it dropped all the way to -16 in a matter of less than 24 hours. So I believe that was a stress event from that wild fluctuation. In terms of frost destroying or harming trees from being late in May, I haven't really seen that yet. That's cool to hear about because I need to learn more about that.
Ryan Mahoney says in regards to Kujanaya, it is my understanding that it has been described as PVNA, not PCNA. I
Sorry.
am only speaking on experience of others and from what I've seen from Cliff. I definitely could be mistaken.
Okay. No, thank you. Corrections are accepted.
We're all learning, like you said earlier.
Yep.
Uh, Matt at Custom Scaping said, any straight khaki that you found to be hardy enough to grow in your area, any
Ah,
non-astringent varieties. Thank you so much for the awesome presentation.
yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. There's one called Victor Derivianco that is hardy down to maybe -8 degrees Fahrenheit, provided you have enough seasonal window to ripen the wood. That's always the clincher with it. So there are some that have been bred in at the Nikita Botanical Gardens that can go down to the negative teens Fahrenheit. We don't see those over here yet, but yeah, there are some that can do these temperatures, and it's just a matter of having a long enough season to get them to that dormancy. So one you might want to try is Victor Derivianco. I know Cliff has it. I have it. A few other people have it. That came over from Ukraine.
And Chris answered a similar question, or asked a similar question about not any other cultivars that are non-astringent when ripe that are hardy to zone 6A. I feel like
I've killed a few Giros. I've killed a few Ichikeki Giros. Those are allegedly non-astringent and hardy to my zone, but I think it's overstated. You know, yeah, 6B at most for Ichikeki Giro, I would think. Um, yeah, that's about all I can say about that. I've just killed two of them.
Mhm. Christy Garner asked, have you come across any research on varieties of persimmons that have more nutrient density than others? I imagine that the varieties that have more wild genetics may retain more of their phytonutrients.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting variable to consider. Yeah, no, I haven't read any studies about that, but it would not surprise me if more of the wild persimmons did have more nutrient density in the leaves and the fruit. You know, it's one of those things that happens during domestication is the loss of nutrient density. So makes sense.
Matt at Custom Foodscaping again says, thinking about the beautiful form and attractive leaves, do you have any varieties that stand out as well suited for edible landscaping in front yards?
Ooh, good question. Good
Yeah.
question. Well, I'm prone to Nikita's gift. She has a nice leaf. But the one Dr. Kazas, that one has a nice big Virginiana-esque leaf. It's kind of dramatic. And that one sticks out more than some of the others. It's very attractive. And it also makes a great fruit. Let me think. Aside from that, no. I mean, they're mostly good for fruit. Proc has a nice big leaf and is dramatic as well. But mostly for fruit. You know, I don't I just have to think about which ones look prettiest, basically. So,
Uh, Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. It's just a matter of going through my memory bank and seeing which ones stick out in that aesthetic way. It's Dr. Kazas, uh, Proc, and Nikita.
And speaking about that, Chris Cohen said, does Dr. Kazaz's fruit stay on the tree like a Rusianka?
Good question. Well, I believe Dr. Kazas, at least when I tried it, the fruit came off really easily. So that suggests to me that it probably drops. When I was at Cliffs, I tried a few of them and they came off very easily. I didn't have to pull or anything. So I suspect they drop.
That's interesting. I had a tree that I put in last year, or sorry, the year before, and it fruited last year.
Yeah.
But the fruits wouldn't come off. But
Oh,
I think
really?
it again that one of those climatic things you're talking about
Yeah.
that it just is a new tree, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's more information needed.
Eric Bina and Chris Garner both ask about acquiring Scion from some of the newest Ukrainian hybrids you mentioned,
Hmm.
including the UKR 15.9.
15.9. I know Cliff has that one. And and he should have Dar Sofievki too. I know he's got a lot of them. He's your best bet for most of those.
Can you elaborate on? So here's one going back to grafting.
Okay.
Um, can you elaborate on the correct timing for grafting persimmons in the spring?
Yes, they certainly can. So, as you know, grafting is all about timing. You have to have the right span of weather at the right time of year. Um, and for me, here in the Northeast, just outside of Boston, that appears to be the third or fourth week in June for persimmons. So you need a window of summer temperatures that's free of wind or extreme weather, that's just nice and warm and sunny for 3 or 4 days in a row. And I find those toward the end of June most years. You can graft as early as May if you want, but the best success you'll get second half of June.
Zen Kai, who was a speaker last year, actually.
Yep, cool.
So it's cool to see you asking questions. Can you identify the varieties on your counter? That's a good question.
Oh, yeah. Can you see them? Yeah, if you can see them, this is Mount Goverla here. This is a hybrid. I have Hachia, and these are Jewel / Yates. And here is a typical Fuyu. I went by my Eastern European bazaar yesterday and grabbed a bunch of $2 pound persimmons. We're lucky to be near Port City where you can get cheap persimmons, so I indulged. Yep, and we grew these. We grew these ones here on the stick. Those are Yates/Jewel. Sorry.
Here's Project Pawpaw with a question.
Yep.
Do the tannins play a role in the tree? Are non-astringent trees more susceptible to pests or disease pressure? And Dan answers, non-astringents are much more prone to stink bug damage. Tannins are a plant protectant phytochemical.
Yes, they do. Exactly. It's much like the acetogenins in pawpaw. They play a protective role in the plant, anti-herbivory, anti-insect, that sort of thing.
And then this is actually something that I'm pretty curious about, and I don't know anybody that's done it, but yesterday during the edible tree leaves talk with Eric Tonzemeyer, he was making mention about drinking persimmon tea, which I've drank in khaki before, and it's delicious. And so Caitlin Chambers asks, have you tried to make persimmon dried? You have to dry the khaki first, just FYI.
The khaki, yeah.
But Caitlin Chambers asks, have you tried to make persimmon leaf tea, and which are the best? So I've never tried the hybrid. Have you?
That is not something that I've tried, but now I will. That's super cool. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Caitlin. Yeah, that's neat.
So Dan asks, did you explain how the original khaki Virginiana hybrids overcame the chromosome difference?
Well, that's a tricky question. I'm not sure. You know, I know of ways that they did cross them. I don't know if the pollen sterilization trick was used in Cliff's crosses or not. He didn't answer the question, but as far as I know, it was an embryo rescue type thing. You know, like the embryos were weak, almost aborted, and they had to go in, clean them up, take them out, put them in a sterile medium, and sprout them there. And I'm not exactly sure how they did that. You know, that's something that I need to read more about. Do you know anything about it?
I'm sorry?
Do you know anything about it?
I thought it was done. There was a post on Persimmon World a while ago, and what's the guy's name? Pashkov. And Marta had found some information. Who's on the call? Marta, if you want to chime in. But I guess it's not known if he used embryo rescue or not, or at least it's not documented. But
that's what I keep
that's
hearing.
my understanding.
Okay. Interesting.
Zenkai asks again, do you have do you have to do anything to protect your fruits from birds once they begin to soften?
Oh, yeah, I have blue jays that like to eat them. And squirrels. The squirrels will try to nibble on the hard fruits, and then they discover the astringency and they bugger off for several months, but they'll come back. It's annoying, but luckily one of my trees fruits enough that I have enough to share, so it's not exactly a huge problem, thankfully. But yeah, I could see that being an issue.
Let's see. So we're getting down to the last couple questions. So if anybody else has any other questions, don't feel bashful. Just put something in there. It's fine.
Yeah,
or even a comment too. I wish we could turn on audio. People could say
Yeah.
things. But Christy Garner asks, do you have any idea where you can locate a Dr. Kaza's tree or scion? Thanks for a wonderful presentation. I'm drawing at the descriptions of some of these varieties.
Oh yeah, Dr. Kazas. You can get that from Cliff. Find me on Facebook. I can get you Dr. Kazas. I have that one if you like. Um, that's one of the things I said early on. I'm not here to sell people anything. I'm just here selling my enthusiasm for these wonderful fruits, you know. But yeah, I do have some scion of some of them if you're looking.
And then Jim said, let us know about persimmon tea.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to trying it. Can you do it with Virginiana or just khaki?
Apparently, I thought it was only khaki, and I've only used khaki, but Eric Tonesmeyer was saying that people do it with Virginia. I didn't know that. A friend of mine, Kazue, is Japanese, and she taught me about it. And she said that she said you have to wait till the leaves have turned color in the fall, and then you pick them.
Oh,
You don't want them to drop on the ground, but you
okay.
pick them off the tree, and then you have to dry them first, and then you can drink it straight, or you can
Hmm.
blend it with green tea, and it
Oh yeah.
apparently has all sorts of good health effects. And if you have illness going on, viral or bacterial, it will kick its ass
Hmm.
too. But I did not know that about Virginia. And but one time when I was talking about that on Facebook, Joe Real was mentioning, no, actually you can drink the or you can process persimmon khakis leaves when they're green and just
Hmm.
dry them like that. I didn't know that. It might be a tannin thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Any other
Um,
questions?
Melissa Flora says, "What is your favorite way to use a fruit aside from eating fresh?"
Well, um, well, my favorite way to use khakis is to dry them. I love dry persimmons. They're so good. I've yet to find a way to dry Virginiana. That's the thing, is that when you dry them and try to use them, they can retain their astringency a lot of the time. So slice and dehydrated is one way. Um, the Virginiana fruits, I just love them fresh from the tree, especially toward the top of the tree where they get that nice rum caramel tone. I noticed that there's some variation in the flavors on some of the trees. Like some years, like this year, the persimmons were coming off kind of bland and insipid. But as the season progressed, they got better and better. And the ones toward the top of the tree tasted the very best. So it's one of those things. And I have here the Mount Goverla, which I'm cutting open right now. So you can see this is the inside of the hybrid Mount Goverla. I don't know if it's ripe yet, but let me still astringent, but it's tasty. It's very khaki-esque. Very, very khaki. Kind of bland, actually. I don't know. I don't think very highly of Gaverla's flavor. The fruit size is impressive, though.
Um, and then Caitlin Chambers says it's a popular tea from Asia, so I think it can be any type.
Cool.
I'm not sure what she meant exactly about any type. But in the chat, um, Lisa says, I make leaf tea from Fuyu, not necessarily a flavorful tea. Adjust the water temperature, uh, something to not boiling and steep. The longer the steep, the more the bitter.
Hmm.
I harvest green leaves and dry out the remainder for fall or winter.
Hmm. Cool.
And
Okay.
then some people are saying, Doug was saying, raccoons break branches on my persimmon every
Yeah.
year trying to get fruit.
I have
Man.
issues with possums on my pawpaws. It's a constant battle. So we have possums, raccoons, and rats here mostly.
Mike Amato says, thank you, Tim, for such a fantastic and comprehensive presentation.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, that's my phone. Sorry. We're gone.
And
We're good.
it's okay. And then Lisa says, oh, sliced and dehydrated, yum.
Yeah.
Frozen ripe hachia like sorbet.
Yes. Yes. Very good. I've never frozen one. And now I got to put one in the freezer. Cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. Joshua says varieties that begin dropping fruit after the fewest number of years in the ground. So precocity. Varieties that avoid frost damage. So leaf out late. What? Any suggestions?
Varieties that are precocious. Let me think. In terms of hybrids, well, Mount Goverla is precocious. I believe Dr. Kazas is. I saw a couple fruit on mine this year, but they fell. It's only the second year in the ground. Nikita is not precocious at all. Trying to think who else. As far as I know, most of them seem about average, in terms of when they start to have fruit. Nikita's a little bit later. Most of them are a little earlier, 4 or 5 years after going in. That's about what you get from most of the hybrids. So if you want something really early, plant a Mount Goverla. That'll have lots of big fruit on it pretty soon. That's what I'd recommend.
Zenkai says, I find that with the astringent persimmons, drying them too quickly seems to be one reason for lingering astringency.
Ah, okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm still experimenting with the Virginianas. Truth is, I tend to eat most of them before I get a chance to dehydrate them. And I'm constantly eating these things.
Eric Bina says, quick Google finds this Virginiana tea. It's foodsofnations.com/products/persimmon-leaves. And it's up in the Q. I'll leave it up in the Q&A for a while if
Cool.
people want to go grab that.
Cool.
Actually, and Owen Smith says something. It'd be good if you could plug your YouTube channel where you have
Sure.
all your fruit reviews and everything.
Yeah, I'm at Ockoo Farm. That's my YouTube channel. I make a video every few weeks or so. I'll be getting into the fall stuff. I'm going to start offering Scion through the channel in the next month or so. So yeah, look, Ockoo Farm, Ockoo Farm is my YouTube channel. And yeah, my wife has a link, but yeah, it's easy to remember. Ockoo, Ockoo, short for Ockoo, which is the hill I live on. So Ockoo Farm.
Zenkai follows up with, do you notice any tendencies for the hybrids to go into alternating fruit bearing cycles?
Not yet. Not that I've had them fruiting long enough to notice, but no, I don't think they do. I haven't seen alternate fruit bearing on many of my persimmons at all.
Tim's phone says good varieties for a U-pick orchard, Zone 6B, Southwest Virginia.
U-pick orchard.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's a cool project. Yeah. Well, Nikitskaya Bordovaya is a benchmark variety. I know that a lot of people love that, especially with the sweet tooth. So I definitely recommend Nikitskaya Bordovaya. If you can get your hands on it, and you will be able to in the next few years, Dar Sofievki will be another great variety to have, as will Roman Kosh. Although Roman Kosh is not precocious, it'll make a tree before it makes a fruit. So bear that in mind. But yeah, I would recommend Dar Sofievki, Nikitskaya Bordovaya, and Mount Roman Kosh as the three that I would focus on. I would recommend Goverla, but her flavor is a little bit lacking. So,
John, sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Lanart or Lanaire. Regarding hardiness for many fruits, trees, and vines, which retain fruit late in the season, which are slow to develop their full hardiness. So it stands to reason that ripe persimmons in northern areas be picked as soon as they are ready.
Well, the ripe persimmons, they're ripe when they're ripe, and that varies by cultivar. Like with Nikitska Bordovaya, it's not ripe till it's a burgundy red and starting to soften. Whereas, when you've been around ripe persimmons, you start to get a feel for exactly when the cultivars are ripe at each at their given time. It's kind of a cultivar by cultivar thing, I would say.
Project Papa says, thanks, Tim. Fantastic talk. And I just want to let people know that he dropped his YouTube link to his channel in the chat if you want to go check that out.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that was my wife.
And yeah, I think we're pretty close to
I think
the
we're
end.
there. It's been a great talk.
Yeah,
Chris, thank you for hosting, and Tim, thank you for a great presentation. So many wonderful things to think about and fruits to dream of.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
All right. In wrapping up, on behalf of NAFEX, I would like to thank our speaker and again, Chris, for making this a great session. I'd also like to thank this year's sponsors. Our sponsors were One Green World Nursery, Copenhagen Farms Nursery, Fedco Seeds, OrchardPeople.com, Southern Cultured Orchard and Nursery, and more. All of that's listed in the emails we've been sending out. Once again, the recording for this session will be made available on the nafex.org website in a few days and posted in, and then it will be posted about a year later on our NAFEX TV YouTube channel. For those, all of our members, we will be sending an email early next week when all of those sessions are up on our website, and all you need to do is log in and you'll be able to access those. There will also be other downloadable content on the website related to these sessions. Oftentimes the speakers are giving us their PowerPoint, so you can go back and look at some of those slides if you would like. Don't miss our last day tomorrow. We have 2 more sessions coming up tomorrow. The first one starts at noon. It will be our annual conference, annual meeting, which will be very, very short, followed by show and tell. And that's one of my favorite parts of the conference. The format will be a meeting format, so people will be able to unmute and turn their videos on and show us cool things that they might be growing or talk about cool things that they are doing. So this is a great way to connect one-on-one with other members of NAFEX and find out what's going on and some of the cool stuff that they're doing. That will be followed at 2 o'clock with our keynote, which will be with Dr. Elaine Ingham. She is the founder of the Soil Food Web. She is phenomenal. She's been doing research and an incredible amount of work in the last couple of decades on the ways to improve your soil for optimal growth of plants, including trees. So you'll not want to miss that keynote. And if you do miss it, you can always catch the recorded session. So thank you again, Timothy and Chris, and thank you all for joining us. We will see you tomorrow for our last 2 sessions. And you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.